Welcome to Product AMA, your daily online Ask Me Anything. We started Product AMA to give those passionate or curious about product management a daily break, something to look forward to.
Today, our topic is about managing your product roadmap when customer behaviors change. And I think we've seen some significant changes in customer behavior during this time. And joining us to explore the topic is Ben Rajabi, who is the Director of Product Management at Wave Financial. Ben, thanks for joining us today and welcome to @Product AMA.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Okay, well, yeah, why don't I start with introducing myself?
Please do.
I am Ben, as you said, Director of Product Management at Wave. Wave provides financial software to small businesses around the world. Our accounting platform, our free accounting platform, is available around the globe. We have invoicing software, including an app that, again, is available everywhere. And then we have payments processing, credit card processing, and bank processing in North America. We have a payroll software that is available in North America. And we have our coaching and bookkeeping services that, again, is available in Canada and US. And exactly 1 week ago, we launched Wave Money, which is our debit account, integrated very well into our bookkeeping software. And right now it is in beta and is available for US on invite basis.
Interesting. And I'm sure you guys are watching very closely the Apple situation in the EU. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, take caution there. Let other people go before you, just so to speak. But I like to begin by getting to know about your journey in product management. So I know you did a degree at Waterloo in math and computer science, and then eventually ended up in product at 500 Pixels. So tell us about why you moved into product and about how you ended up at Wave.
Sure. So yeah, I did computer science with a software engineering specialty in Waterloo, and the last couple of years the goal was to go into building games and building great software and actually being a developer. When I graduated, I actually hit the 2003 recession, and it was just a very different environment from the time that I went into university. So I pivoted into maybe not so much by choice, but into operations. So I joined a company, SPI Group, which was in the energy industry, helping them with their operations and support. And really soon I realized that I really liked solving problems, but I really liked talking to people and managing people and interacting with people, and that's where my career changed in a way, and went from operations to managing a relatively large team to start doing sales, contract negotiations, etc. And through that process, I got to work with customers. I got to ask them questions and help them solve problems, and that was really my intro to product management. And I did not have academic understanding of product management, so it was a lot of it was through learning and working with customers. 500px was interesting for me because I always had a passion for photography, and it was just the perfect mix for me to in a way marry my passion for photography with my passion for software development and product management. So that's how I entered the startup world in a way, and joined 500px. Had a good stint in there, and then after 500px, I was introduced to Wave by one of our VPs at 500px. And she introduced me to the product team at Wave and the people and culture, and we started having conversation to see if there was a fit. And then that's where my journey at Wave started. When the journey started. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you talked about the recession, because we I think a lot of people who are coming into product management or just graduating right now are, pretty scared about the prospects of, careers and jobs right now, coming through the pandemic. And, just to reassure them, like you talk about the recession in 2003, I mean, there was another one in 2008, and believe me, in my 20 years, I've seen a few. So
That's right.
So the ability to pivot and see what opportunities there are, and then leverage those and learn from them is really, really, I think, a powerful skill.
Absolutely.
So that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And I love that you started in a product area or service area where you already had some passion and some domain expertise. That's
Right.
great. And yeah, product. I mean, probably when you started, product management was still not really well defined yet. And you still had a bit of variations, amongst how people interpreted it, but it's really nice to see now after several decades that the profession is more, well respected and understood, and has become a very significant part of a lot of tech companies. I mean, 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a CPO, right? Chief Product Officer.
Yeah.
So now that's, elevated, I think, to the C-level suite, and it's a sign of how far we've come. So
that's fantastic.
great.
And we also see people from all different professions or backgrounds coming into product management. In our product team at Wave, we've had people with mechanical engineering degrees, with psychology degrees, with accounting degrees, all different backgrounds coming in and doing really, really well in product management in a domain that could be completely foreign to what they've studied in school.
But the common thread is really that curiosity and commitment to solve problems, right? By interacting with customers, right? And
exactly.
Not in a vacuum. And so that's where it comes to. So, yeah, that's great. Thanks for the explanation. Let's talk a little bit about Wave and how is product management organized at Wave, and how does your team work cross-functionally with other parts of the organization?
Sure. So product management, we've had multiple different iterations of product management at Wave. The way we are set up right now is that we have different line of businesses, and each line of business for a lot of our major products. Let's take accounting, for example. There's a line of business. It is a line of business that has a line of business director, a dedicated product manager, in some cases, multiple product managers, product designers, engineering teams. And then we've augmented that team, but still within the line of business, with data analysts, researchers, product marketing, and customer success liaisons, and in a few cases, compliance leads. So our line of businesses are complete teams. And then we have matrix structure for marketing, CX, etc. And we look at our product management, product design, and our line of business leads to be the glue that connect these various line of businesses. Because as you would imagine, our customers don't look at us as Wave Accounting or Wave Payroll. They look at us as Wave. So we need to make sure that we have that consistent and coherent, cohesive experience for our users. In terms of methodologies, we've recently moved to a more outcome-based approach to product management. So it's actually heavily inspired by work Teresa Torres has done with the opportunity tree and in building solutions that meet opportunities, that meet desired outcomes. So we use that framework, but in terms of processes, we've left it fairly loose and fairly non-prescriptive for our product managers. So our product managers are required to fill in things like opportunity one-pagers that answer a set of questions. But we're not that prescriptive on exactly what the process looks like, handoffs and etc. But that's kind of the overall framework that we use. From a communication point of view, we absolutely believe in over communication. So there are different cadences through which we communicate both product initiatives, etc. First, within a line of business, there are weekly touch points that talk about, what are the top things for a line of business to achieve from each of the functions. And then there are monthly reviews of both our data as well as our customer insight that happens both within line of business, but just as importantly, within the product management function. So on a monthly basis, all of our product managers will sit together and we talk about what have we learned about our customers over the last month? How have we learned about our customers over the last month? Have we found different ways of capturing feedback? What are some of the insights that we've captured? And that allows us to be up to date, not just on how our customers behave, but also how we get this type of feedback from our customers. We also have, a North Star wall where, we talk about our roadmap with the extended group, the rest of the organization, what is coming up next, what are some of the opportunities that the teams are exploring, all of those things. So go from very micro, weekly basis to, quarterly cadence of communicating roadmaps and communicating product ideas.
And who drives that structure and process? Like, is it everybody together, or is there sort of, a senior person that has responsibility for making it happen?
Yeah, really good question. So it does depend. A lot of the more operational side of things. So the operational cadence of a line of business is led by our line of business director. So what are the major initiatives across different functions? What are the strategic pillars, et cetera, are typically led by the line of business director. Customer research, roadmap, communication of those are led by our product managers. The way we're really structured, we actually enable our product managers to sit at very strategic levels. We do not have, we have very flat structure within our product organization. So our product managers actually do present to the E-team about the opportunities that they're exploring, the initiatives that they're driving. So it varies depending on whether it's an operational cadence, strategic, related to product, related to customer customer insight.
That's great. Yeah. Communication is a bit of a messy thing, isn't it? It's sort of, it's like herding cats, right? You want to do a lot of it, and you want a lot of, over communication, but at the same time, it's hard to have it perfectly structured anyway.
That's right. Yeah. And there are certain cases where things are changing, so you cannot realistically talk about deliverables 6 months, 8 months in the future. But then you'll need to balance that with the fact that certain teams need that much of a lead time to create things like marketing campaigns, to train support staff. So that balance of when you communicate, how you communicate is super important to strike.
Nice. Yeah, we'll come back around to that later, but because I want to talk about sort of the form of the roadmaps. But I have one more question about alignment, and that's that I'm assuming that your sort of lines of business are not separate apps per se, but that you have some sort of shared platform and services, right?
Yes.
So do you have any, who pays attention to that and make sure that your ongoing development and maintenance of that serves everybody well?
That's right. So we do have operational engineers and DevOps, and we also have a fairly sizable platform team. We call them the core services that takes care of a lot of these, lack of a better word, glue between the different apps. And there is a dedicated product manager, product designer, et cetera, for that. But it's not really a traditional line of business.
Sure. Understood. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Yeah. I've seen that in a lot of other places. And so, when you talked about the line of business units, I thought, yeah, there's some infrastructure there. It just doesn't happen by accident.
That's right. Yeah, so, for sure.
That's cool. Well, so for those of you that may have just joined us, you're on @ProductAMA, and we're talking to Ben Rajabi from Wave Financial. And as a reminder, this is an Ask Me Anything, which means that you can put your questions in the Zoom chat window for Ben, and he and I will talk about them as we get to them. So don't hesitate to put some questions in. So Ben, before the pandemic lockdown, talk to us about, what were your teams doing to understand customers and their needs? Like, what kind of activities were they doing?
Right. So we have, our product development cycle has a discovery phase and a delivery phase. And the discovery phase, we use a variety of methods, but whether they're qualitative or quantitative. Wave has, as long as I've been there, at least, have been really, really amazing at quantitative feedback gathering. So we instrument our app really well. We have really good BI tools to look at behavior of our customers within the app, and understanding what they do. So that's on the quantitative side, and then we use qualitative to better understand the why. So we do regularly send out surveys, whether they are in-app surveys. We use a software called Qualaroo that allows us to do quick, 2-question apps within this, 2-question surveys within the app, and then longer form surveys that we send out and we request our customers to respond. What we found out is that our customers actually do love to give us feedback. So when we give them the platform and we're mindful of their time, and we ask them directed questions, they love to give us feedback. What we are getting to now is more of a continuous discovery mode, where we don't send out surveys or we don't do quantitative and qualitative research when we need to validate a problem or see if a solution is valuable for our customers, but rather we do that on a regular cadence so that we continuously get feedback from our customers. And that's relatively new at Wave, and we're getting better at it. But it is definitely something that we strive to achieve.
So what kind of questions do you ask if you're doing it, sort of independent of a specific validation that you're looking for?
Right. I think just understanding how businesses work is absolutely valuable for us. So understanding whether our business owners look at their business as their main source of income, as a hobby, as something that they want to grow versus they want to maintain. Understanding what are their main pain points that they're solving, whether they're solving it with Wave or outside Wave. Are they struggling to get more customers, or are they struggling to save costs? Just understanding these type of things that are really independent of whether they use Wave, whether they use a particular product or not, really allows us to see how they change through time, and also what are some of the big opportunities that we can start tackling.
And have you seen? I mean, we should talk about the sort of the current situation specifically, but as I assume you started this before the lockdown, were you starting to see kind of trends that you might not have seen otherwise if you were sort of focusing on specific validations?
Yes. I mean, some of what we observed is very similar to what other companies may have observed. We see that we saw that one of the first things that a lot of businesses did was to try to reduce their staff. But that was not across the board. I mean, we saw that was more on certain industries, and then there were other industries that were actually increasing their staff. Again, right now it is not surprising, delivery services, cleaning services, etc., might have needed to add more employees and contractors, and restaurants and bars, etc., had to reduce their staff. So we did see that, and we saw that through our regular research. Similarly, we saw a lot of businesses just slowing down. In fact, we see two types of people, and one of our research members called it movers and waiters. So we see a lot of businesses really moving to change and adapt to the environment. So we had, for example, one of our customers used to make shots, alcoholic shots, and their business switched to making hand sanitizers. So we saw a lot of these type of pivots, or identifying how they could market better, starting new marketing campaigns, whether they're YouTube or other ones. or how they work better remotely, utilizing conferencing tools, project management tools. So we see a whole bunch of businesses trying to adapt to this pandemic, and we could see that through data and through the surveys that we did. We also saw a group of businesses who decided to wait it out. Part of it by choice, part of it because the type of businesses they had was very difficult to pivot. And those businesses typically started focusing on survival, reducing costs, making sure that they could survive 3 months, 4 months, and continue maintaining their customers as opposed to focusing on getting new customers or growing their business. So we see a lot of these things happening as we did research.
Interesting. So as you were starting to observe those changes in behaviors, like tell us about what you did with it. Could you codify it? Did you, how did you turn it into some insights?
Yeah, so we do have, we did a couple of things. First of all, when we started seeing trends and when we started seeing the pandemic actually hitting, this is early March, one of the first things that we did was to actually look at our existing roadmap, looking at the existing pipeline and say, okay, let's assume that things are changing. Let's reevaluate whether these are things that we still want to tackle. Are they going to help us now? Are they going to help us be prepared for when the pandemic is over? At the time, we had no idea when. Or were there things that were part of our roadmap based on our existing understanding of our customer behaviors? So we actually went back and scrutinized all of our decisions. And through that process, we actually scrapped a couple of our initiatives, even though they were fairly far down the road in terms of discovery. So this is based on previous understanding. The next thing that we did was we looked at, well, what can we do now to help our customers now? So through that research, we understood what are some of the biggest anxieties that our customers had. Cash flow being one of them, it's a relatively obvious one, but the other one we found was the anxiety around getting help from government, staying compliant. We had the PPP in US and CARES Act in US, there are various government subsidies in US, just understanding how to apply for them. How do you get help? That was a major challenge for our customers. So then we started saying, okay, well, these are opportunities that we need to address now. And we started putting effort behind that. And in honesty, it was very difficult. We had, as we were building these, we were building software as government regulations were being developed. So we were building something, we were releasing it, we had support articles, and in the same day, we would have to change our support articles because additional information was understood or was developing through this process. So I don't know if I answered your question, but these are some of the things that we did to help us, in a way, change our roadmap and still be able to help our customers.
Yeah, for sure. And how did you? I'm assuming that sort of your primary concern was, was supporting and retaining your existing customers. But how much were you thinking about? Oh, is there a way we can monetize this?
At the time, we didn't. In fact, we went the other way around. We said, look, this is right now for time for us to help our business owners. So in fact, we had a couple of promotions for existing customers. We were extra careful not to make it sound like we were using these promotions as a way of acquiring customers, which basically we made a bank maintenance free for a period of time, or one of our other products, we made it free. So we actually looked at it the other way. We said, look, right now is not the time to try to monetize this. Let's make sure together we get through this, and we genuinely try to help our customers through this time. And part of it is like we know that at some point this type of behavior will reward itself as our businesses understand, we're there for them.
Nice. Yeah, I think, that's part of that, balance between, being profitable, obviously, so you can sustain the business and grow, but, also balancing that with your mission and vision and purpose, right? Like, why are we here? It's not just for the money.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's great. Interesting. Well, so one more question before we start to take some questions from the audience, and there is one so far, but for those of you in the audience, please get your questions into the chat windows in Zoom so we can get to those. But so you talked a little bit about how, the impact on the roadmap. Tell me a little bit about whether there's been a change in your sort of overall product management practice or process is as a result of this kind of thing,
there has been actually. So again, a few things happened. One was that we actually had to shorten our horizon. So instead of trying to build things for next year, we started looking at opportunities for the next month, for the next 3 months. So shortening that, and through that, this is an analogy is like you're driving in a highway and going really fast, but you can see far ahead, as opposed to driving in a dirt road and you have to continuously swerve. So we had to prepare ourselves to be able to pivot really quickly. So in order to do that, then we shortened our horizon. We also allowed our product managers and product designers to skip a few steps in the spirit of moving faster. So we moved from making sure everything is really, really validated before we build it to let's make sure that we know how to measure its success. If ship it, and if it's not as successful as we want, then modify it. So having fast follows and having polish coming sometimes after something gets released was some of the things that we did to allow us to actually move faster than we typically would have done in normal circumstances. And this was particularly important when we were talking about things like in our payroll product, or that required us to move fast to allow our customers to get the money from the government and apply it to their next payroll, get the subsidies, etc. What we also did was we actually started spending more time with our customers, and that means asking for feedback more frequently, whether they're through surveys or interviews, etc. And then we also had, and this wasn't some of this stuff that I'm talking about is not necessarily within product management only, but within Wave as a whole. We started doing more customer research around behavioral changes with COVID-19, independent of product features. So we had our research group reading a ton of white papers, interviewing a lot of customers, sending out surveys, and capturing what is changing with our customers. We had our data team looking at individual pieces of data, behavioral data within each of our line of businesses and seeing trends. So we got closer to, or became more frequent on understanding how our customers changed.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think it's it's so important to almost separate the discovery of problems and underserved needs from your feature set, right? You really, if you're going to be open to new innovations and new ideas, you have to separate those two. So good for you. That's really interesting. So yeah, we've got a couple of questions from the audience that I think would be great to pose to you right now. Sure. So Rhythm's asking, when things are changing, especially when you're building something new, a new feature, product management might need to drive the short-term roadmap through different directions, which can cause a lack of trust among stakeholders, especially the development team, if things are changing and not aligned. What do you recommend that a PM do in such a case? How did you manage those rapid changes and adaptations with the development team who may have been expecting a sort of longer timeline?
Yeah, I think bringing them along in the ride, including them in the discovery and in opportunity discovery and solution discovery, as opposed to having a handoff between product management and product design to engineering really helps. So when we encourage our engineering teams, engineering leads to sit on interviews to actually review customer feedback with the rest of the team. And for people other than product managers, product designers to kind of understand what is actually happening, help them actually be really supportive of these changes. We also, the other side of it is also have engineers come up with ideas. This isn't supposed to be product management versus product design versus product engineering. This is one team. So oftentimes we have engineering teams bringing ideas on how we can even change existing product to support new features with minimum amount of effort. So again, gathering ideas and gathering feedback, facilitating these type of brainstorming sessions is huge to success of being able to move really fast and have everyone one.
And how do those product teams work? I mean, is it kind of informal, or is there sort of a formal identification of that kind of triad, you know, with architect, technical feasibility, and business objectives and user experience together? Like, does that happen in the discovery problem identification phase, or primarily in the ideation solution phase?
So with the product manager, product designer, and engineering leads and business, the LOB lead, this typically happens earlier on as an opportunity discovery. So at the time that we are still trying to validate a problem, engineering leads are typically brought in. And then when it comes to solution, ideation for solution, then likely a larger team is involved. It's a more formal brainstorming sessions. And what we've done is actually different teams, different line of businesses have their own way of doing things. We're not necessarily saying every line of business has to perform exactly the same. Different teams have different individuals working with them. And sometimes it's more formal, sometimes it's less formal, depending on how that team finds is best for them to move forward.
Yeah, and to some extent, the kind of problem they're working on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So we have another question here from Jaskarat, who's saying that with permanent structural changes expected in the customer behavior in the future, do you think there is scope for doing a transformational change in the product roadmaps for long-term product roadmaps, or long-term product rollouts? So I guess the question is, you know, can you foresee a time when it'll be possible to make longer term product roadmaps? and if so, you know, what are going to be the best practices to create, you know, kind of a template or best practice for a longer term roadmap?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I don't know if I know the answer to right now. What we see is that we are still in a phase that we're looking at more short term than long term, but we are starting to see some trends emerging, moving to more digital methods of communication with customer, accepting payments, more virtual ways of working. So there are certain trends that we are seeing that are emerging, that then we can now start looking at more longer term solutions. I suspect that there's going to be things that it's part of in a way, retro things that we've learned through this process that we can apply to new ways. For example, now we're seeing that having a more frequent cadence of understanding customer change is actually a useful thing to have, whether you are in a pandemic and you're moving, your roadmap is 1 month long, or you're in a more a new norm where you can have, you know, year-long roadmaps. I don't believe in having roadmaps that are longer than a quarter. Our business is changing so fast that we just can't see that far into the future. But some of the things that we're learning right now are likely going to be applied as we move to a more longer horizons. One that I can mention is more frequent understanding of customer change.
So
hopefully that answered.
Yeah, I think that answered it very nicely. And I think if I have two follow-on questions to that, one is, if the team is spending more time in a more frequent cadence talking to customers, how does management feel about that or support it? Because it's time in discovery, which isn't necessarily billable or productive time as far as some people might be concerned. Like how do you get support for that?
I'll get back to you if I ever get in all honesty, Kirk, CEO, Paul, our CEO, are absolutely supportive of this way of behaving. And actually, I shouldn't say supportive; they're promoting this way, because we've seen that when we actually understand how customers work, really understand the problem, we have an amazing team that can actually build great products for them. So spending the time is absolutely valuable. And I think with a lot of other companies, discovery doesn't need to take a lot of time. It just needs to be deliberate. As we do more continuous discovery, as we are closer to our customers, some of our discovery processes may actually be shorter, because now we can reflect we can look at existing research that has been done relatively recently and apply that to discovery of new products. So I don't necessarily agree that spending time in discovery has to get elongated as we spend more time with our customers.
Good point. Yeah, it's as you say, it's that kind of focused discovery where you're not just sort of looking for a needle in a haystack. You are actually building on something. That's
exactly,
neat.
Yeah.
So, and the other question related to that, the shorter roadmaps is, presumably there are still some other parts of the company that, need more time, lead time to do things. So whether that's operations or your NOC or marketing for launches or support enablement, how do you sort of balance that when you've got a shorter term roadmap?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think I should say that when we're talking about short roadmap, it's norm versus exception. So there are, even right now, products or projects being worked on at Wave that have longer timelines. We don't always control the timelines. There are certain things that are based on government changes. We know certain things are going to change every January, for example. So we may want to get ahead of that. So when I'm talking about shorter timeline, in a way, I'm excluding things. We look at those as things that we have to do it outside of this framework of thinking. So we do have initiatives that are longer, and because of exactly what you said.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. And there's a couple of questions about more sort of, role and career oriented, which I'll come back to in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But just, finishing off on, what we've been talking about, as the importance of staying close to those customers and the increased frequency or the cadence of talking to them as they adapt to, new ways of doing business. You talked about surveys, both in-app and otherwise, and you've mentioned interviews. Have you learned any new methods or techniques that help you to do that better?
In all honesty, no. I think what we've just done is try to tweak our existing methods a little bit. We are more explicit in telling our customers how much of their time we actually need. We try to be very mindful of the context of when we need their help, how much we need their help, and whether this is the right time to ask for their help. But off the top of my head, I think there is any new method of capturing customer feedback.
You just, as product managers, you just get better at asking open-ended questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So let's see. One question from Sangeetha is about what would you recommend for someone who's a business analyst to move into a product manager role? Like, I'm assuming you have some business analysts on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a kind of clear, migration path?
We don't actually have business analysts. We only have product managers. In my previous role at prior to 500px, we had business analysts. So it's a little bit of the different role. The only suggestion I have is to start taking on even small projects, but then applying product management roles. Ask for to be involved in even small operational optimization, small projects, but then spend the time on discovery, spend the time on understanding how modern product management methodologies work. Really, the reason I'm suggesting that is that's how I started, and that a lot of what I did, 5-6 years ago, was more closer to business business
Analyst,
business analyst,
yeah.
Right? And then I started applying certain aspects of product management to that role, and then I started getting myself more familiar through following certain thought leaders, reading a couple of books, and then starting to look for opportunities both within the company or outside.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful, because I think that looking for opportunities to gain the experience, even if it's in small steps, is really vital. I hear all the time, new people that want to get into product management are challenged in the interviews and often get rejected because they don't have any experience, right?
Right.
And so it's really an advantage if you can come to the table with at least a little bit of experience,
Right.
and that understanding. That's great. So one more question on sort of roles from Sabrina, who's asking, do you have any tips for someone who's transitioning into product management right now and is going to start their first product manager role remotely?
Wow. We actually have had three product managers joining us after we moved completely remotely, to complete being completely remote. I don't see a lot of difference in from a product management discipline. I think that the challenge with product management is very similar to challenge with other roles where you're remote, and that you don't get to see people as much. You don't. All interactions are more deliberate. You have to set up Zoom calls to talk to people. So it's a lot easier to be siloed. This becomes bigger problem for product management because part of your job is to facilitate, to be that connective glue between different stakeholders. So I think one thing that I would recommend is actually spend the time and the effort to meet people, build relationships, and have that regular communication with different stakeholders. And by different stakeholders, depending on the structure, it's not just your product designer or engineering team, but it could be your risk team, it could be your legal team, it could be your support team. And building that relationship is super important, because it's harder now than it was when you were at the office.
Yeah, so more emphasis on kind of methodically getting to know people and building that trust relationship cross-functionally, right?
Right.
Rather than just sort of relying on people you run into at the water cooler or something.
Exactly.
And actually, interestingly, this has come up with a number of the other product leaders we've interviewed on Product AMA, who are, in addition to having some regular cadence with their online team meetings to make sure everybody stays connected, but they're also organizing, sort of a little bit more informal, almost social meetings, not long ones, but just ways for people to connect with each other on a personal level, and get to know each other and support each other when they're feeling isolated, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of our line of businesses right now, so both within different functions, whether they're product design, product management, etc., but also within our line of business. So with your product team, having these informal interactions is absolutely valuable at this time.
Nice. So, so since your customers span a wide variety of industries, and you've talked already about sort of which ones you've seen, be the movers and which ones are the waiters. Tell us what your thoughts are, and maybe this is a bit of crystal ball gazing, but what types of businesses are likely to survive and thrive in the future in the Wave customer base?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I think about all the time, and it's very difficult because it does depend on the industry. We know that entrepreneurs are resilient and they're passionate and they're brave. So it is difficult for me to come and say, if you do this, you're going to be successful. They know their business better. But what we see is that businesses who try to get innovative with the way they run their business and how they get customers are likely to survive, or not survive, to prosper. So it is, in a way, those who adapt to the new norm. If your business is typically in person, how do you move that online? Whether you can or not. So getting innovative with the way you run your business is absolutely crucial. And we see that also on the way businesses perform. I mentioned that, like, moving to more online methods of payment, learning how to operate remotely. And those who adapt, I think, are the ones that they're going to be able to survive this time better, and B, maybe learn something new through this process that maybe there's a better way to do this, that this pandemic has been a forcing function. With that said, this is an extremely difficult time for small businesses, and it would be very very arrogant for me to say, this is what you should do to survive.
No, I guess it was more about, are there particular opportunity areas in terms of industries or types of businesses that you think, based on your experience, that you think are going to kind of rise to the top?
Yeah, I think those who are doing more online, and this isn't a revolutionary thought, but I think that is those companies are going to grow more. The one thing that I see a lot of companies are doing, and I would recommend, is trying to get government help, whatever is available to them. It is difficult, but there is help out there, and companies who get those help are also more likely to survive.
Yeah, for sure. They give themselves a bit more runway, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have just a few minutes left to maybe for two more questions. One is from Harmon, who's asking or saying that Wave is one of the success stories in Canada. Most of us are aware of that, and we're deeply proud of Wave and what you're doing, because it has managed to solve an important problem and then execute it very successfully. And he goes on to say, oftentimes one of the areas that scaling startups struggle with is that execution. So in your experience, what are some of the hallmarks of teams that excel in delivery and then execute successfully?
That's a great question. So one thing that I already mentioned, I wanted to repeat, is, and this is related to the relationship between product management, product design, and engineering and delivery, is that collaboration and bringing people who execute on opportunities and solution well in advance, bringing along as you do the discovery work, because we see time and time when you bring in engineering, when you're doing problem discovery, they bring in ideas on whether something is even doable, whether it's feasible, whether there are better ways of doing that. And not only that motivates and enables the delivery teams to do better, but also allows you to go in the right path and not have to zigzag and deliver something and backtrack on it. So I think that would be that's one thing that I've noticed with really successful delivery teams.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I think that's, yeah, it's definitely one of the outcomes and benefits of this move to a more, sort of multidisciplinary team approach to product. That's great.
The other thing that I recommend, and this is very difficult, and we are recently getting into that mode, is start celebrating outcomes as opposed to outputs. Start celebrating the impact that the product that you're delivering has on your customers, on your either your customers or your business, and that allows you to start looking at ways to solve outcomes as opposed to simply having being a feature factory, releasing things after another. And that's where I see a lot of very successful product teams.
It's powerfully motivating for the individuals on the team too, because they know as individual contributors that they're making a difference, that they're having an impact on customers, and that's
100%.
business.
Yeah. And you brought up an excellent point in that giving that feedback back to the delivery organization, helping them celebrate those outcomes, the achievement of those outcomes, huge motivating factor.
That's cool. Well, one last question, and that's about you and how you keep up with the profession of product management. What are there books or courses or other resources? I mean, you mentioned Teresa Torres, who I know well.
Yeah.
What other things have you found especially useful in your career that you could share with?
Oh man, it's an ocean out there, and I personally struggle keeping on top of everything that happens. And so there are a few people that I follow. John Cutler and Teresa Torres are the two people that I follow both on Twitter and follow their work outside. There is, I try to read as much as I can, and not just about product management, but also on things like strategy. I'm just finishing up a book by Richard Rummel called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. It's a really, really interesting book. The one thing that I do suggest, particularly if you do have a team or you work in a team, is learn from each other. And every day when I go and interact with any of the product managers in my team, that's a new learning experience for me, particularly because they're actually doing the work there. They are also spending time and working to better their craft. And that's an amazing opportunity for me to learn from them and also encourage them to teach each other. So try to create an environment where people are okay to learn from each other and are promoted to teach each other. That's, I think, is a really good way to learn.
That's brilliant. Wow.
Thank you.
So that's all that we have time for today. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to hear your sort of wisdom and your learnings and your insights. I definitely appreciate it, and I think everybody on the call has appreciated it. So thank you for taking the time to do this and to support the community. And I think you're emerging as one of the leaders that we all want to encourage.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Follow Product AMA on Twitter and send us your topic suggestions. We look forward to seeing you soon.